So this screencast is just giving you some pointers really on ways that you can keep up to date and to develop your communication skills further. Because remember that what we are looking at graduation is a basic level of competence. And many of you are way above that basic level of competence. But it's very easy to fall into bad habits. And it's a good idea to try and revisit your skills and to take them forward throughout your career. So how are we going to do that? Well, the first thing is to make sure that you're up to date with the evidence base, which is actually developing quite a lot. There's an awful lot going on. There's several dietitians doing PhDs on communication skills at the moment. And of course, we've got things like our new SOPs, which talk about communication skills, but they also talk about dealing with diversity, which requires new skills and different skills to be able to work with different people. So be mindful of the policy and keep your eye on the evidence base because we're learning stuff. There's new stuff coming out. Remember that you are at the graduate level, and so many of you are exceeding that minimum level that we'd expect with a graduate. But there's always room for improvement for all of us. So you've been given today a bit of an introduction on motivational interviewing. There are other things that you could learn more about. So be open to thinking about, where can I develop? And it kind of determines a little bit on, what your area of practice is. So there are certain areas of practice where advanced communication skills are going to be particularly useful. So with poor mental health, with eating disorders, with obesity potentially, long-term conditions, all of these things where people might be struggling with change or with maintaining their dietary behaviours, all of these can use skills and we can work with them, particularly that whole idea of addressing change. So do think about your behaviour change skills. University College London has a unit of behaviour change. So there's a lot of information there. BCT Online, and now some of you will be familiar with this if you did your B2 with Sunlight Nutrition, because the staff there work with BCT Online. And those courses have been going for a very long time, but they've been refreshed and revised, and they are very much directed at dietitians and run by dietitians and psychologists. So they can help you to revisit your skills, but also they have courses on motivational interviewing and another one on cognitive behavioral strategies. So very strong, very practical, very skills-based courses. If you just want to learn a little bit more about motivational interviewing, the BMJ have a short course which you can do online and get a certificate for, which you might want to put in your portfolio. The cognitive behavioral strategies, there are a number of courses out there available on that. I say the BCT Online do provide that. There are courses on mindfulness, and this can relate to mindful eating. Not so much mindfulness in holistically, but about mindful behavior, becoming more conscious of eating behavior, and that can be really useful as well. I have come across this course on functional imagery training, and I've given you the actual, the reference there is for the paper about functional imagery training. And this is about training patients or service users to use imagery in their minds to try and help them to visualize where they want to be getting to. And this can be quite useful. It's got this paper shows you quite a high success with people who are trying to manage their weight. So instead of just focusing on goals, it's about visualizing goals, people seeing themselves in, an item of clothing they want to get back into, or something like that, where they really work at building up a picture in the mind of where they want to be, so that when they are tempted to eat something that doesn't fit into their food plan, they can bring that picture to mind and it can help them to make a more healthy decision. I just find it quite interesting, and it's something that you may see more about. You've looked a little bit at the Diet Comms training package, but there is a lot of resource on there. Um, and hopefully there will be a few more bits going on to it in the not too distant future. So just be mindful of that resource to go back to, and because there's a lot that we haven't even touched on there, particularly around the guidance sheets. Now, of course, you're all going off to different places, different departments, and some of them may use peer observation, some may not. Perhaps you're the person who might suggest it. And what it is really is a really good way to revisit how you're doing in practice. The ideal would be to have the whole department working on it, but that may not necessarily happen. But it's where a group of people observe each other and try and help each other to pick out what we're doing well, what behaviours are working. It's been used widely in healthcare, and of course, you've done quite a bit of that as part of your training. But how about doing it when you're in practice? And so we know that it works for students, that people find it useful. They may be a little bit ill at ease initially, but it raises awareness. It gets you thinking, actually, oh gosh, am I still doing that? What do I need to work on? What can I do that's going to improve how I work? So it has a good evidence base, but thinking about doing it in practice, there are barriers. But when we did our first survey, about 25% of the respondents were doing that in practice. And it had increased in 2018, but I suspect that's gone backwards now because of the pressures that are going on in the NHS. But it's something that's worth considering about because it can really help bring back your awareness of your skill level. It's very good at changing attitudes and helping with reflection. There is evidence that it leads to improved consultations, improved outcomes as well. And when you just have that understanding of what's been going on and just step back and have a look and reflect on what's been happening, it can be really helpful. And I did some work with a department in Australia in 2020, or it was published in 2020. And what they were doing was setting up peer observation in the workplace. Everybody in the department signed up to it. They were all observed. And they used Diet Comms to make an assessment of where people were at, but including that, what went well and areas for development. And they brought in some training, I think like a training update, and then reassessed how people were doing. And what was really important from my perspective is that the ones whose skill level scored least highly initially were the ones who improved most. So that's really an important thing, I think, to be able to look at and think, right, actually, this could improve my skills. This could improve my patient outcomes. And it's about remaining open to that idea of developing your skills further. If you want to know a bit more about peer observation, there is a guidance sheet on how to do peer observation in the workplace on the Diet Comms training package. So there's guidance sheets on a lot of different things on Diet Comms. Those of you who are going to be working with students and how you might be teaching and assessing students. There's one on that. There's one on dealing with negative experiences, which can influence us going forward. And most of us at some point will have a consultation that really has a negative impact on us. One or two people have mentioned recently about needing to develop their group education skills. So there's information about that. And there's also some information on telehealth, which of course is very much more part of what we do. But apart from the information there, all of these are referenced and can guide you to other areas where you might get some support. So the key thing is you make a plan, have a thought about what you might be able to do, be open to learning and developing and looking at ways that you can support others to learn and develop in the workplace. Don't just think, I've made it. That's it. I don't need to think about this again. Because it's very easy for people to slip into less good habits, and we can all develop our skills as we get more experience of trying to work in the time frame. And you'll be very well aware of time pressures that will go up as you go into your band 5 jobs, and it's very easy to slip back. All the evidence base suggests this, that if you're not careful, you slip back into becoming more expert-led consultation, more you telling the patient what to do rather than really working in a person-centered way. So I hope that's helpful, and I hope that you will be going away and thinking, right, what next?